Welcome back to Fresh Health. I'm in my kitchen and today I'm going to be making gluten-free, dairy-free, refined sugar-free pumpkin pie. It is delicious, it is easy, and first we're going to start with the crust. Again, it's a very simple basic recipe and you could use this as your pie crust for any kind of pie. So it is a nice base recipe. So I'm going to start with 1.5 cups of gluten-free Bob Red Mills flour. This is one of my favorite gluten-free flours to use for this pie crust and one that I would recommend for this pie crust because it does work really well. So we're gonna add that into our bowl here. So next we're gonna add a teaspoon of organic vanilla. Then I have here a 1.5 teaspoons of lucuma powder, which is a natural sweetener. It has a bit of a caramel maple flavor, and it just adds a nice extra little flavor to the pie crust. And you can get this, if you're not sure where, at the Light Cellar, or Spud has it as well, and everything that you see here today is from Spud. So go online, order your groceries right to your house. So we have this, and the first thing that I'm going to do actually is give it a little stir and mix all of the dry ingredients together. So essentially flour, lucuma powder, and vanilla is the first step. All right. And then the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna add a 1/2 cup of coconut oil, and we actually do want it to be room temperature and hard because this is what's gonna serve as one of the binders to make the pie crust stick together. So if it's melted, it won't work as well. So we'll add that in. And then what I recommend is either to take a pastry cutter or a fork and to mix this together. Got my fork here. And you'll just spend a couple of minutes mixing the flour in with the coconut oil. So if you're normally using butter, this, again, the coconut oil is a great substitute, or some people will use shortening. So again, you would substitute just the same amount. All right, so as we see, we have that coconut oil blended in really nicely with the flour and the vanilla and the lucuma powder. So we don't want there to be any big chunks left. So just make sure you just take your fork or your pastry cutter and mix it up really well. So the next thing that we are going to add are 4 tablespoons of unsweetened coconut milk. So I like to use coconut milk again for the dairy-free. I find it's a bit nice and creamy. You could use almond milk as well, hemp milk, rice milk, whatever you like. I find coconut milk works the best. So I'm just gonna add little by little. Depending where you live in the world, the dryness is different, the air temperature is different, the humidity is different. So just start with a little bit, and then once your dough gets to a nice formed ball, then you know that you've added enough. You might need to use all 4 tablespoons, you might need a bit less, or maybe you might need a little bit more. So give it a good mix. So then what we can do is we can start to grab this mixture and start to form it into our dough. And what I recommend is to just grab pieces at a time and just add it to the main ball of dough that we're making here for our crust. This makes a really great pie crust. So like I said, you can use this for any kind of pie that you like. Pumpkin is my favorite, so that is the one that I'm usually making if I'm going to make a pie. And it's nice because the more you kind of work it in your hands, that coconut oil melts a little bit, so it'll just be perfect when you're putting it into your pie plate, and it will spread evenly. So what I like to do to grease my pie plate is I actually just take a little bit of coconut oil, put it on a parchment, and just grease the pie sheet. Then that way our crust won't stick. All right, so I've got my beautiful dough. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to put in the pie crust. So I normally will put it in the middle of the pan, and I'll usually just push it out a little bit, and then again I'll put it in and I'll just start pushing it out. I find it covers really nicely, and I like to cover it all the way up to the edge of the pie plate. So just put a little muscle into it and spread out that dough. Again, we can see that that was quite an easy process to make the dough. You just have to put a little arm power into it. It is a good arm workout, that's for sure. And if you need to compensate some dough for another area, definitely grab some. So I like to push it up to the edge. And then while you are pressing in your pie crust, you can turn on your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. We will not have to just bake the crust, we'll be able to just throw the whole pie in the oven, which is nice. And it'll be in the oven first for 10 minutes at 400 degrees once we get the filling in. Okay, so we've got our pie crust. It is evenly distributed. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna prepare the filling, and then we're gonna put it in the oven. So I have everything ready to make our pumpkin pie filling. Again, very easy, very simple, and depending on how much cinnamon and nutmeg you like and what kind of sweetener you want to add, you can totally switch it up. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add a can of pumpkin to our bowl for our filling. So feel free if you'd like as well. Some people like to add a sweetener. Sometimes I just like to make the pie actually just with the nutmeg and the cinnamon. But you could always add roughly about a half a cup of maple syrup or honey or coconut sugar into this if you wanted it to be a bit sweeter. I know as well you can get some of the canned pumpkins at the store with a bit of cane sugar or sweetened already as well, so you can do that if you like. So pumpkin is the main ingredient, and then we're gonna add a little pinch of cinnamon. You can kind of add as much as you want. I usually like to add about a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon. If you're really into cinnamon, feel free to add more. Again, you can taste test. I'm gonna add a little bit of nutmeg. So again, I just usually add a little pinch. If you really like nutmeg, add more for sure. So I'm just gonna give that a little mix. It smells amazing. One of the best parts about making a pumpkin pie, aside from eating it, is the smell, the aroma that it brings when it's baking in the oven. Okay, so we have that mix. The next thing I'm going to add are 3 eggs. So we'll just put those in there. And again, very simple filling. It won't take long to mix all of this up. Our oven is preheating again. Set your oven to 400 degrees, and that's gonna be where we start. And then we will be changing the temperature to 350. So I'm gonna give that a little whisk. So we just wanna make sure that we mix the eggs and then the coconut oil in very thoroughly after. So give that a nice mix. Nice and creamy. Okay, and then the last thing I have here is about 3 or 4 tablespoons of melted coconut oil. So again, we want it to be melted, otherwise it's gonna be chunky in the filling, and we don't want that. So just put it in a pot, heat it up, and let it get to its liquid form. And then you can slowly whisk this in, but whisk at a pretty brisk pace. Filling is cold, and coconut oil will go harder in cold liquids. So we want to give that a good mix. The coconut oil is great. It adds a bit of a coconut flavor. If you don't like coconut oil, you could always leave it out. I really like it though. It makes the filling very creamy and very full of moisture when you finish baking it. Okay, so we've got our filling. Looks beautiful. Now let's add it into our pie crust. So again, here we go. Very easy. Make sure you get all of that out of the bowl. Okay, so we've got that all together. Pumpkin pie. Time to put this into the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. And then after it's baked for 10 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, we're gonna lower the temperature to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and then bake it for about 35 to 40 minutes or until the middle is totally cooked, and you'll be able to use a toothpick and check and make sure that that is good to go. So let's put it in the oven. Just pulled our pumpkin pie out of the oven. Again, this is gluten-free, dairy-free, corn, soy, and refined sugar-free, so a lot of allergens that are out of this. So we put it in there for about 35 minutes on 350 degrees. Of course, first we did that 400 degrees Fahrenheit for the 10 minutes. So we have our beautiful pie. Let's dig in, why don't we? So again, usually I recommend letting this cool for about 15 or 20 minutes first. And then feel free to dig in and slice into it. I love to serve some Screamin' Brothers dairy-free frozen treat ice cream on this. So there we go, it's still a little hot, but nonetheless, a beautiful piece of pumpkin pie. Can't wait to dig into this. Thank you so much again for watching today, and we will see you next time.